Welcome to the video. We're going to be servicing a BMW 120D. We'll be doing an oil change, replacing oil, air and cabin filters. So let's get straight into it. Go to your favorite place to order your parts. I normally order my parts from Euro Car Parts and they pretty much have a sale all year round. It's easy as going to their site, entering your number plate and verifying the make and model of your car. Then you're able to quickly choose the parts that you need. Once you've got the parts, just make sure you have everything. I've got the recommended parts for my car. Make sure to check your owner's manual before you order the parts. Make sure you have a car jack to lift the car up safely and 2 axle stands to hold the car up to allow you to work safely on the car. Start off by getting everything ready. Place an axle stand on each side and also get your car jack ready to avoid going back and forth. As you can see, there are jacking points underneath the car, so use that just to be safe. Otherwise, find a firm point under the chassis. The car was fairly low and I didn't have much clearance to use the jack, so I put the car on some bricks to give me a little bit more room to use the jack. So from here, go ahead and jack the car up safely. Once the car is up in the air, allow it to place the car axle stands underneath and release the car slowly. Once the car is jacked up, walk around the car and give it a push in different areas. The car should be stable and safe for you to work on. Put some old towels or use cardboard under the car. It will get messy when we drain the oil. You might be doing this on your drive, in your garage or on the side of the road. So we want to keep it as clean as possible. Get your oil can ready. You can get one off Amazon. It makes it really easy to drain the oil as well as to store it, so you can empty it to a container or recycle it later. So under the car, find out where your oil drain is located. In this case, I have a small lock that I need to turn with a flat screwdriver in order to access that area. The sump plug uses a 17mm socket, so go ahead and attach it to your socket wrench. Using the socket wrench, slowly loosen the drain plug. Make sure to place the oil catch right below to catch in the oil. While the oil is draining, we're going to go ahead to the driver's side and pull the bonnet lever twice in order to pop the bonnet. Next step is to take off the engine cover. There are 2 plugs underneath, so give it a firm pull and it should come off right away. Locate your oil filter. It's fairly easy to spot, otherwise check your owner's manual. I cleared off some cable to make it easier for me to access the oil filter. Lay down some tissues or a towel underneath the oil filter. Once we lift the casing, small amounts of oil will spill out, so we'll try and keep it clean in the process. So go ahead and identify what socket size you need. In this case, I'm using a 27mm socket. It fits the cap perfectly, so go ahead and attach it to a socket wrench and begin to undo the air filter. Take it slowly but also be firm, especially if you or the previous owner have tightened it up more than you should. Once it's loose, undo it the rest of the way by hand. This way you can try to control the oil spilling. You can see I've gently lifted it out and left it there to drain. The oil filter actually has a plug underneath which will allow the dirty oil to flow through to the bottom of the car. I'm not sure if you can see it on camera, but when I lifted the oil filter I could see a bit more oil draining under the car into the tray. Next, slowly lift out the oil filter holder. You can see the plug at the bottom which drains the oil. Place a clean towel over the casing to avoid any dirt flying into it. You can see the old filter here. It's not too dirty, looks like it's been replaced during the previous service. I'm going to go ahead and replace it anyway. Opening up the new filter, you should also have a brand new O-ring and a drain plug washer too. We're going to replace the previous one just to make sure there are no leaks. Without putting in excessive force, give the old filter a firm pull to remove it from the casing. It's important to compare the two and make sure the dimensions are the same. In this case, it looks pretty much the same. You can see the plug is exactly where it is and the size is roughly the same too. So let's go ahead. So use a flathead screwdriver to pull out the old O-ring, and we're going to replace it with a new one. Using the screwdriver again, pop the new ring back into the same place. Firmly put the new filter in and you should hear a small click. Rotate it and just shake it out just to make sure it's locked in properly. In the oil filter casing, you can see where the plug should be, so align it carefully. Next step is to push it in and slowly tighten by hand. Once it's fairly tight by hand, you use a socket wrench to tighten it the rest of the way. Replace the drain plug washer with a new one. Once that's done, we're going to go ahead and pull out the dipstick and clean it. We'll use it to monitor the oil level once we start filling it back up. The oil level has pretty much drained, so remove the tray from underneath the car, tighten up the plug and it's ready to recycle at your local centre. Working backwards, tighten the drain plug by hand. Once it's fairly tight, wipe off the remaining area so we can monitor if there's an oil leak, and tighten it the rest of the way using a socket wrench. Make sure not to tighten it too much. It does have a washer and it's pretty much designed to stop the oil leaking anyway, and you don't want too much pressure going in. I also laid down a towel underneath so I can see if there are any leaks once we start filling up the oil. Before you start filling it up, make sure it's the recommended oil type for your engine. This car uses a 5W40 and I have 2 cans adding to 5 litres of oil. Before you remove the engine oil cap, take the chance to clean off the surrounding area. This will avoid any dirt falling into the engine when you remove the cap. To avoid spilling everywhere, use a funnel and slowly start pouring out the oil. I started off with a 4 litre can as I knew the engine took at least that. Make sure to check your owner's manual for the correct oil capacity. I poured in about 2 litres and after giving it a minute, check under the car to make sure there are no leaks. Check the surrounding area of the drain plug to confirm. In small bursts, empty out the rest of the can. Let's check the dipstick to make sure it's slowly filling up the engine. Looks like it's somewhere between the minimum and the maximum. You can wipe it on a piece of tissue to check. The oil can is 1 litre, so I'm using the markings on the side. I poured in about 0.25 litres.
Alright, just a little bit more.
Check in the dipstick in between, fill it to the appropriate amount, the rated capacity for your engine. Once you're done, remove the funnel, clean up the area and close up the engine oil cap. Next, we're going to start the engine to make sure it's running smoothly and make sure there are no leaks around the engine oil cap and the oil filter. Turn off the engine and check under the car to make sure there are no leaks. If it's all good, go ahead and close up the compartment and lock it with your flathead screwdriver. Before you close the bonnet, make sure you haven't left any tools laying around. This is obviously going to cause some damage when you shut the bonnet. We're then going to pop the engine cover back. You can see where the portion is to firmly push and lock. So pay attention to that when you push the engine cover back in. This car actually has an electronic oil level checker built in, but before we do that, we need to make sure the car is level on the ground. So we're going to work backwards to slowly jack the car back up to remove the axle stands. Do this safely on the other side too. As you noticed earlier, I had the car on some bricks to get some clearance from the ground, so I slowly reversed it back on the ground. Meanwhile, I emptied out the used oil into the old container. I try to keep old containers so I can reuse them for recycling the oil, of course. Also wrap the previous filter in some tissue as well. Back in the car with the ignition on, going into the vehicle status, let's start the measurement for the engine oil. The car is now flat on the ground, so the oil level will be a lot more accurate. Once the measurement was complete, you can see the oil was at the bare minimum, and the car was shouting at me to add another litre of oil. So go back and fill in the required amount. Altogether I put in 5 litres of oil. So I came back to run the test again, and the car was happy. We need to reset the oil service history of the car, so we know roughly when we need to service the car again, and the car will also give you an alert when it is due. Hold the button on the dash to bring the service menu up. Cycle along till you find the oil symbol, and since we've changed the oil, the car will allow you to reset. So hold the button again to initiate the reset, and hold it once more to confirm. Next, we're going to replace the air filter. Pop the bonnet again and locate the air filter compartment. Locate the clips around the compartment and undo. If they're quite stubborn, use a flathead screwdriver to undo them. I also unclipped the cable on the side to make it easy for me to lift the compartment. Once you've done all of that, you should be able to flex the compartment open, just about enough space to pull out the old air filter. You can see the old air filter here. It's a little bit dirty, but it looks like it's been serviced properly fairly recently. Bring out the new filter. We're going to compare it to make sure it's the same size. It looks good so far, it just looks like a newer version. So when I removed the filter, I noticed the air filter compartment is fairly dirty. It had some buildup of dirt and some leaves that got trapped in over time. So I went ahead and removed the sensor carefully, and then undid the Jubilee clip using a flathead screwdriver to remove the airflow pipe. You can see there is some dirt that built up over time. We're changing the filter anyway, so I wanted to take the chance to take some time to clear this region out. Using a damp cloth, wipe and pull out as much dirt as you can. Now we're ready to install the new air filter, so position it correctly and press it firmly into its place. Put the cover back on and redo the surrounding clips. Make sure to connect the airflow sensor back and attach the airflow pipe back. Also make sure to tighten the Jubilee clip that you undid earlier. Perfect. So before you shut the bonnet, just make sure the surrounding area is clear of any parts or tools. Finally, we're going to replace the cabin filter, so we can have some fresh, clean air back into the car. The cabin filter is located underneath the dashboard on the passenger side. We will need to remove 2 bolts in order to remove the glove box cover, and it's fairly restrictive in terms of space, so get fairly comfortable so you can spot the bolts. The bolts require a 10mm socket, so go ahead and start undoing them carefully. Once both bolts are out, give the cover a firm pull downwards and it will detach. You can see these are the clips that were holding it up. Next, let's remove the cigarette lighter wire and the bulb wire. The cabin filter has a cover holding it with 3 screws. I believe it requires a T20, so go ahead and loosen the screws carefully. Once all the screws are out, the cover should fall over. If not, give it a light pull. Pull out the old cabin filter. You can see it's filled with dirt and some leaves. It means it's doing its job. Look at the difference between the used and the new one. Let's go ahead and install the new one. Working backwards, install the new cabin filter back in. It's actually a weird curved design, so I had to readjust it a few times. Once it's installed, put the cover back on and tighten the 3 Torx screws. Before putting the main cover back on, reconnect the cigarette lighter and footwell bulb cables. Put the main cover back in place and firmly push it in so it clips. Finally, install the 2 bolts back in place. All there is to do now is to start the car and make sure everything's working. I changed the mode so the air comes out on maximum power across all the vents. Seems like it's working and there's good airflow, so the job is done. I hope you guys enjoyed the video and learned something new. I've linked all the tools and parts I've used in the video in the description below. Thank you for watching.